The new summer festival banner is obviously a bait that unfortunately had me hooked, with the 2 new units being my favorites in the game. Let's talk about one of them, Yukata Lathna, who was already hinted during last year's summer festival event and anticipated for a very long time. She is a permanent 5-star Windblade unit who has a kit seemingly focused on relatively high skill damage and slight strength and resistance debuffs. She is vastly different from her original form, as she doesn't have Nyarlathotep or any dragon related shenanigans in her kit. She's quite an interesting unit to check out, which we'll get to now. Her first skill, Summer Moon Howl, is a skill with varying damage modifiers, based on its phase. It can dispel buffs from each target, and grants a defense amp with a maximum team amp level of 2. And as usual, if the skill hits enemies, skill shift is activated. In phase 1, it deals 1650% damage. In phase 2, it deals 1725% damage and reduce enemy strength by 10% for 10 seconds. In phase 3, it deals 1800% damage, inflict the same 10% strength debuff, and also inflict a 5% defense debuff on enemies for 10 seconds. With a cost of 2640 SP, the skill itself is actually decent, with acceptable skill damage, and provides strength and defense debuffs, though there is more emphasis on strength debuffs as it is present in phase 2 and phase 3. Overall, this skill is a good skill with good damage and status debuff afflictions. Her second skill, Haunter of the Festival, costs 6000 SP. It deals 1753% damage, lowers enemy win resistance by 3% for 20 seconds, and can deal additional damage, based on the level of combined team defense amp she currently has. At level 1, she deals an additional 948% damage. At level 2 and higher, she deals additional 1896% damage. This skill has incredibly high damage modifiers when team defense amp is available, but is relatively unimpressive at its base form. The 3% win resistance debuff is actually quite small, despite its longer duration. Overall, this skill is incredibly powerful when conditions are met, but relatively lackluster otherwise. Lathna has the conventional 10% strength co-ability and an impressive 20% dragon haste chain co-ability that is incredibly effective on Galanot and dragon focused win units. In terms of abilities, she doesn't really have an exclusive ability. But, she has one brand new ability, which is her 20% reduced strength Punisher, which works very well on Lathna, as she can inflict strength debuffs quite easily through her first skill. She is resistant to the cold, but not bog. These two afflictions aren't that different from each other, as they both inhibit movement, and can allow units to sustain more damage. Her last ability is 30% skill damage, increasing the damage output from her skills, which has good modifiers, especially on her skill damage focused second skill. Yukata Lathna has high skill damage modifiers, and has the capability to reduce both strength and defense of enemies. Her damage also increases when attacking enemies afflicted with strength reduction. This calls for a standard offensive build with debuff time extension to extend the duration of her strength and defense debuffs, which also increases her damage output. For dragons, typical attack-based dragons are good on her, though anyone with skill haste is fine for a more debuff-focused gameplay. Her great options would be Reborn Zephyr, Mijat Sorma Zero, and Veu, as 3 of these greatly increase her damage output. Long is also a good option when Lathna has a build with high crit rate. For a debuff focus option, Ariel is a good pick, with a strength buff and 30% skill haste. Lastly, Zephyr is a good last resort option when no other good dragons are available. In previous videos, I mentioned about the best weapons that can be equipped on each character. However, since the best option for each and every one of them has always been the Agito weapons, I believe that it is no longer necessary to mention the optimal weapons to be used. The weapon segment will be replaced with her team setup, discussing about which units can work well with a particular and the same team. For Yukata Lathna, since she deals increased damage to enemies with strength debuffs, another strength debuff unit will work well with her, with the current support units that fit this role being Sailus and Valentine Melody. For her Wimprint setup, if I were to actually have her in my roster, I would equip her to provide a balance between damage output and supportive capability, possessing offensive prints, while also having additional skill haste and debuff skill time. Yukata Lathna is obviously a hybrid of main DPS unit and a debuff support unit, and she is able to perform both roles quite well. With her supportive nature being debuff, she is totally viable in the minion stages. As for her weakness, her glaring weakness is her lack of damage over time afflictions, which may reduce team-wide damage output, but is able to be compensated by other units that have the ability to inflict damage over time afflictions. Overall, Yukata Lathna is definitely a great unit that is a wonderful addition to any team. Even if she has no place in your team, her design is cute enough for a child that coexists with an ancient dragon that kind of has a relation to the incidents in the latest event, but also kinda doesn't. Now go out there and expect Yukata to be one of the next Yukata units in next year's summer festival. That's all from me. Moga out.